Hey friends and family, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video will be on the brief side in regards to my most recent video of the Fool possibly being someone in the sex industry, or a sex worker. Now, if you didn't see that video, I'll link it down below, and I encourage you to watch that first and this second. Since that video was released, I have to say thank you to those of you who are in the majority, who aren't laughing me out of town with the idea that the Fool card in some depictions could have been portraying a sex worker. Now remember, it's always been the concept that has been important in the cards, and how a region or a location, a location or the region, as I mentioned, or the period of time. Because remember, tarot has been around for so long that as it migrated to different locations, the idea or the way they might depict someone who was a transient or unfit for human society or unfit for polite human society may have varied, right? So in the really early cards, we have, like in the Charles VI, we have somebody who's scantily clothed. He's got his bells, which would show him as somebody that the town needed to be aware of coming through. He's scantily dressed in the presence of children. Then we had the Noble, which was 200 years later, but in a different country. And there's no children present, but he's got his member showing. One of my viewers, Alexandra, after seeing this video, reminded me of the Air Cold Este, which I should have pulled because I had the deck, I just didn't think of it. And here we have it contemporary in time with the Charles VI, and we have a Fool who's really like obscene, and the children aren't throwing stones at him, they're like fascinated by his member. So there is precedent for a Fool coming through town with children present, which may have been the reason why some regions of Italy may have changed and adapted the concept of somebody who's coming through town to lure children. This might be an argument for why this card could be seen as the Fool card. There's nothing so dangerous looking about this unless you go a little deeper and say, well, he's luring children. So unless their parents are there, unless somebody's keeping tabs on him, where's he taking them? Right? You see what I'm saying? So that debate, whether this is the Fool or this is the Fool, could be argued, till the cows come home. Bear in mind, in the earliest cards, and if we consider, say, a deck like whatever went on in this Visconti court, or the Visconti Sforza court, the idea was the concept, for example, the concept of the star card or the concept of the moon, and they would have the image of the moon or the star or the sun, and they would sometimes have the description of a woman holding it, the fill card, so they'd have a space for showing that the sun was the most prominent feature, and then a woman just displaying it like Vanna displays the letters. So as it migrated and went from region to region or country to country, or as 200 years passed, the concept of the sun, the moon, or the star could have been portrayed in different ways. And so that's why we start to see a variety in what's on the star card or what's on the moon card, right? But the concept is still the sun, the moon, or the star. The 21 cards plus the Fool have prototypes, right? They have a concept. So the Fool, from what I'm guessing with these early cards, seems to be describing an individual who comes through who is not fit for society for whatever reasons, and it's up for those town folk to decide how they're going to portray that, in their cards. Now, when we think of the noble, which came 200 years later, we don't have the wanderer, in the presence of children, but he still has his member exposed. So perhaps, whoever created the noble was familiar with the tradition of a sex worker, if that's what this is. I don't know. I mean, this is just a rabbit hole I went down, and I'm putting it out there, and I don't really know for a fact that that's true. In fact, it's probably not true, but, when you interpret the cards, and I think most of you realize that the whole point, or the success of interpreting the cards, is to be able to make connections between a question and the image. That's the objective, right? You're answering a question. So the cards that present themselves, you need to make them connect to the question. And that's the gist. That's the way I embrace card reading, is because I follow that little rule for myself, that little rule of thumb. The images, you make the connection between the image and the concept, or the story, or the question rather, right? You'll see, and this is one of the reasons why I just love looking at the cards. I can peruse the card. In fact, some days I just come in here, I shut the door, and I just look through cards for hours and hours, which is why I go down rabbit holes, which is why then sometimes I'll do a video for you guys saying, hey, look what I just thought of, look what I just noticed. And I think sometimes we see mistranslations, evidence of that. For example, by the time we get to the TDM, we see this character and we would identify him as the hermit. He's got the lantern, he's got a satchel, he's wandering through. But what was missed is that if they took that idea from this card, this card's really about the star. This is the star card, right? So the concept of this card was the star, and this is how they portrayed it. Somebody who wanders through night, perhaps. Maybe that was the whole point of showing, a nighttime, wanderer, right? But by the time it got to other regions and other periods of time, it became, the star card evolved into the Aquarius, the image we associate with the astrological sign of Aquarius. And before this, we might have just had a maiden holding a star in the sky, right? Because, the female form was just filling the long space, but the star of the card was the star, So I think it's pretty interesting. So there are concepts on the 21 cards plus the Fool card. Those were concepts that were important. And as it migrated and as time elapsed from region to region and, country to country and time to time, the folks who decided what images to put on those 22 cards put what was relevant to them at that period in time and space. So it's the concept. It's the concept, perhaps, of a wanderer who might do harm, which is why he might wear bells, right? To signal that he's coming through and he's unfit. The same with the magician. He's got wares, he's coming through. He and the fool, no matter which one you think is which, he and the fool are not far above one another, right? There's still people who are coming through, and still people who might not be too polite for society, although one might be more acceptable than the other, depending on which card you see as that. At any rate, I hope this made sense. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.